"Daddy, how do you like me?" Diana twirled in front of the mirror, watching her skirt unfurl into a little pleat, and Felix looked at her with a smile as she sat in the chair. Mrs. Marcia Lee stood by the fireplace and wiped away her tears. "Oh, you are beautiful. You'll be the prettiest girl in school, and of course, the smartest." Felix grinned. "Marcia, you have everything and always the best." "Why, you look at her, Mr. Felix Boyd." The man grinned. All right. This time I agree with you completely." Felix, looking at his daughter, suddenly thought about how Diana came to have him in the first place. It was only because of this, as everyone said, tough character that his daughter lived with him. A few years ago, Felix, an aspiring banker, had met Eustacia. The acquaintance was such that a serious relationship was out of the question. Eustacia worked as a dancer at the club, where the young businessman liked to relax. The club in general was very popular with all kinds of businessmen. They made deals there during the day, and in the evening they had a great time. Felix immediately noticed the appearance of a new dancer. She wasn't just pretty, she was unconscious when she danced. The first night, he tried to ask her to join him. "Darling, you are simply enchanting. I want to ask you to dance just for me." He looked at her eyes full of desire. He knew for sure that tonight she would be his, because any of the dancers would gladly follow him, which he always took advantage of. He didn't leave here alone most of the time, rarely, very rarely, when things were exhausting, and Felix drove home alone. The girl gave him such a look that he was even a little confused. "Honey, go away. I'm dancing here, not selling myself." She turned and walked away. Felix remained standing there with his mouth open, but he quickly came to his senses. He shook his head in admiration, whether he was stupid or too clever, and it seemed to be the latter. But Eustacia disappeared and never showed herself again. When Felix went to look for her, she had already gone home. No one had ever done that to him before. He had been so angry that he had gone home alone without anyone to take his place. He didn't see the girl until 2 days later, and she blew him off again. Then Felix decided that she just had to be his. He got it, of course, but one thing he didn't like. Eustacia didn't want to depend on him at all. She accepted his gifts so carelessly, as if she didn't care about them. And he knew she really didn't care. It pissed Felix off. It also pissed him off that he was getting more and more attached to her. In general, their connection was like a fire, a natural disaster. Eustacia did not listen to him at all. They burned with passion for each other, then fought to the point of fighting. He was so tired and exhausted by the relationship. At one point he said, "That's it, quit your dancing. Come live with me and behave yourself." And Eustacia smirked. "I was just wondering, as whom?" "Well, like my woman." Felix knew what she meant. "Honey, don't get me wrong. You know I can't marry you. You're a bar dancer. I'm not going to shout on every corner that I was your first." "No, of course you wouldn't. Only I won't live with you either. It's not right for a man like that to sleep with a bar dancer. Go away." Felix jumped up. He was just poured with rage. "Do you even know what you're saying? I might as well leave, only you'll regret it later, because I'm not coming back." "Who told you you'd be called back? Who needs you, bugger?" Such an insult, unfair in his opinion, was too much for Felix to bear. Who is she anyway? He slapped Eustacia across the face and ran out of the apartment. Felix headed to the bar with the firm intention of getting drunk and forgetting his unruly snake. He got drunk, of course, except that with each drink, his thoughts of Eustacia superseded everything else. He was furious about it, even got into some kind of fight where he was safely smashed in the nose. When Felix finally got some fresh air and sobered up, he realized that she was to blame for all his troubles and adventures. Felix went to Eustacia's house, opened the door with his key, and quietly made his way into the bedroom. He stood for a while, admiring her perfect body, which was clearly visible in the light of nightlight, and then abruptly pulled the blanket off her. Eustacia resisted, but it was useless. He left in the morning, saying goodbye to the speechless girl. "Don't even think of hiding from me. I'm not letting you go." And then Eustacia disappeared. He reconnected all his connections, but the girl disappeared into thin air. He was suffering, going crazy. Felix was ready to fall to his knees, to spit on all decency and marry her, but Eustacia was nowhere to be found. 7 months went by, and one night he got a call at his apartment. "Mr. Felix Boyd?" He sat up on the bed. "Yes, it's me. Who is it?" The clock read 3 a.m. He guessed something was wrong. just didn't know what or with whom. He didn't seem to have any relatives or friends who might be in any kind of trouble. "There's a call for you from the hospital. Do you know Eustacia Hodge?" In shock, he didn't even immediately realize it was his beloved Eustasia. Yes, of course we do. I don't understand. What's wrong?" "Would you mind coming up?" Eustacia Hodge passed away in childbirth. But before she died, she left a letter that the daughter she gave birth to was also your daughter. She left a letter for you too. "A daughter?" Now, Felix thought he was losing his mind, that he had lost his mind, or was just dreaming. The man pinched himself painfully, even covered in sweat from the pain, and said, "I'll be right up." Eustacia wrote that she loved him very much, but she couldn't stand that attitude. She wrote that he should raise their daughter like a real princess. Felix hadn't cried in years, but when he was shown the baby girl, he couldn't hold back the tears. In order to take Diana away, he had to undergo a DNA procedure that once again confirmed his paternity. That's when Mrs. Marcia Lee came to the house and became the nanny, housekeeper, and baby advisor. "Well, Diana, it's time. Marcia, are you with us?" The woman sighed. "I'd love to, but I got a pie in the oven and meat marinated. In case you remembered, we've got your friends coming over tonight." "Marcia, what a fool I am. John called me this morning and told me he and his wife couldn't make it to dinner, and I completely forgot." And after an awkward pause, Felix added, "Why don't the three of us sit down? Me, you, and Diana, especially since you're already like family." Marcia smiled and let it be known that she was pleased to hear those words. There were a lot of people at the school. Diana walked with her father into the school building, looking around eagerly. Suddenly, she tugged her father by the sleeve. Daddy, look, girl like me." Felix pleaded where she was pointing and froze. Not far away from them stood a girl who looked exactly like Diana. I mean, the girls looked so much alike that you'd think they were twins. They also had the same hairstyle and exactly the same school uniform. Felix blinked a few times, but the vision didn't go away. "What the hell?" He took Diana's hand tighter and headed toward the girl. She was standing sideways, and the woman, apparently the mother, had her back to them. There was something vague and familiar about her, but Felix couldn't think of anything right now. "Excuse me." The woman turned sharply, and Felix could hardly contain his cry. Eustacia was standing in front of him. After a second, he realized that it wasn't Eustacia, or rather Eustacia, but not her. The woman was looking at him frightened, clutching her daughter to her, and Diana and the girl looked at each other without looking away. Felix took the woman's hand. "We need to talk." She sighed and nodded obediently. They walked away, leaving the two girls alone. Felix was silent for a long time. His mind was confused, and he understood absolutely nothing. Only a few days ago, he and Diana had been in the cemetery, and now Eustacia was standing there with him. Felix still couldn't say anything to the woman. He turned and walked away, leaving her bewildered. It just so happened that his Diana and a girl who looked like her were in the same class, and even the teacher thought they were twin sisters. While his daughter sat in class and listened intently to the teacher, Felix gathered his thoughts. His goal was to talk at all costs to the mysterious woman who looked like Eustacia. As soon as class was over, he found the woman with his eyes, approached her, and suggested that she and her daughter go to the public garden across the street. "I think we should meet," he said. The woman looked at her daughter. "This is Anna. My name is Alicia. I can guess who you have me confused with. I'm Eustacia's sister. We were twins." The girls pulled away a little, and Felix ruffled his hair. His mind was going through things that any psychiatrist would love to write a dissertation on it. "Alicia, I don't know how to explain all this, but even though your sister's with Eustacia, our children's fathers are different. How come there are such similarities?" The woman sighed and looked him in the eye. "Their fathers are the same too. You are Anna's father." Felix took a seat on a nearby bench. His breath was short and his eyes were cloudy. "But that just can't be. You and I have never met. You didn't even know Eustacia had a family. She always said she was single." "My sister was always like that. Never listened to anyone or understood anyone, and did everything the way she wanted. When my mom died, she went off the rails altogether. She had a high GPA and got into one of the most prestigious universities in the country. But eventually, Eustacia decided to give it all up and work as a dancer. How many times I talked to her, how many times I tried to get her and take care of herself. In the end, we fell out and didn't communicate at all. I went to see her that day and tried to talk to her again, but Eustacia was already drunk. She told me I could only spend the night because she was going to a party. And in the morning, I wouldn't be here. And in the night, you showed up. I tried to resist, but it was no use. Eustacia came in the morning, caught me in tears. I told her everything, and she just threw me out. A month later, I realized I was pregnant, but Eustacia had her phone off. Who you were, I just didn't know. It wasn't until recently that I found out she was gone. And I didn't find out she had a daughter until now. Felix sat and tried to understand what he had just heard. It just couldn't be. Well, there was no such thing. But the girl who looked just like his Diana was direct proof that this was no dream. He stood up. Okay, I don't know what we should all do next. I guess I should start by apologizing to you. I was drunk at the time, and my heart was broken. I was sure you were Eustacia. I know that doesn't excuse me. Don't apologize, Alicia interrupted him. If it weren't for that incident, I wouldn't have Anna. She's everything to me in this world, just the two of us. Felix looked at Alicia. Well, now you're not alone anyway. Let's go to our place. We just had a dinner party canceled, and the housekeeper has already prepared everything. His words were heard by the girls, who immediately jumped around him, holding hands. Yes, yes. Felix insisted that Alicia and Anna move into their house. Alicia, we have so much room. Why do you have to squat in such a small apartment? You're no strangers to us after all, and the girls will be taken to school and picked up together. And you can work. You can take care of your personal life. The last words were hard for him. He didn't like the idea of Alicia having her own life. It had been almost a year, and Felix felt that it was getting harder and harder for him to look at Alicia. He would have confessed his feelings to her long ago, but he was afraid of her reaction. She might think that his feelings were not for her, but for Eustacia. He went to the cemetery. Eustacia, Eustacia, what should I do? I love Alicia. I can't live without her, and I can't tell her. I'm afraid I'll lose her altogether. Maybe she's afraid of the same thing, afraid of losing you. Felix turned around abruptly. Alicia was standing behind him, tears in her eyes. She had come to Eustacia to talk too. Felix walked over to Alicia, looked at her for a second, and then held her close to him. There, now it's going to be just right. Just a year later, Felix and Alicia gave the sisters a baby brother. It was as if Marcia had grown younger. I'll try to manage the three, but she refused the help of another nanny. There's nothing for strangers to do here. We have our own family. Felix laughed. What a nice way to put it. Family of our own.